1,275 attendees. You got comments from 44,407 Pennsylvanians on their feelings. And on the tour, 68% of the 67 counties who showed up at the tour, 68% were in favor. 82% were in favor of those who weighed in either online, by phone, by fax, or some other way. So I think the Lieutenant Governor did a phenomenal job of actually gauging the feelings of Pennsylvanians. They took extensive notes and delivered a report to me on their findings, which I have read. The report includes a summary of the tour stop attendees, what they said, what they viewed, and it also looked at the top reasons as to why people supported or opposed the legalization of recreational marijuana for adults. Again, as I said, it also included feedback that we got from our online fax and telephone ideas. Finally, the report does a really nice job of doing a survey of all the other states that have legalized recreational marijuana and looked at the impact, not only the impact, but how legalization happened in those states and the impact it's had on those states. In the report, the Lieutenant Governor concluded that Pennsylvanians support the legalization of adult use recreational marijuana. So again, as I said, I have reviewed the findings of this report, and as a result, we are calling for 3 actions. 2 that we should take immediately, and then the third that might take a little bit longer. The first is based on feedback from residents. We are calling on the legislature to get a bill to my desk decriminalizing nonviolent and small cannabis-related offenses. There are examples of this. Representative Gainey has a bill that has introduced a bill that would do this. Earlier this year, to reduce the possession of a small amount of marijuana from a misdemeanor, converting that to a summary offense. But Representative Barry Joswiak has also introduced a bill in the House, in the Senate. I think Senator Sharif Street and Senator Barlotta have also introduced bills to that effect. So this is a great start for the broader issue of criminal justice reform, and so applaud you for that. Second, the same overwhelming response was heard from residents to expunge the records of people previously convicted of these crimes. So we're seeking a path to restorative justice through the expungement of past convictions of nonviolent and small cannabis-related crimes. This has the potential to affect tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians, many of whom have had their lives shattered by a conviction on an action that most Pennsylvanians do not believe is a crime. As you know, I've made criminal justice reform a priority, and I have successfully worked with the legislature in a bipartisan way to create things like the Clean Slate Bill, which has sealed antiquated records for thousands of Pennsylvanians, allowing them to move on with their lives. It eliminates Pennsylvanians from a lifetime of suffering due to the possession of a small amount of marijuana that I think if we can reduce the consequences of that, that's going to be an amazing thing. It's a jobs bill. Together we can get more Pennsylvanians back to work, working across the aisle in this building, and we can prevent them from being kept from renting an apartment or attending school due to this type of nonviolent conviction that happened in their past life. So those are the first 2 things that I think we can do immediately. Then finally, we are calling for the General Assembly to seriously debate marijuana legalization. There are multiple bills introduced to advance that measure, and with support from many legislators, including Jake Wheatley in the House, Senator Sharif Street in the Senate, that they agree with the many Pennsylvanians with making adult use regulated marijuana use legal. That includes me. I agree with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish together, especially the criminal justice reforms we are proposing today, which will have an immediate and positive effect on thousands, tens of thousands of families across Pennsylvania. So I want to thank you again, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, for conducting this important research, and to every Pennsylvanian who took the time to attend the tour, to write a letter, or to make their wishes and their feelings and opinions known in one other form, any other form. So this is something that I think Pennsylvania is now ready for, and I applaud the Lieutenant Governor for doing what he did to gather this information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman.
I would first like to thank the governor, because he is the one that authorized me to embark on this 67 county journey to find out exactly where Pennsylvanians are on this subject. And I also want to thank the people that came out. As the governor mentioned, over 10,000 Pennsylvania residents took time out of their busy schedule to come and weigh in on this really important topic. And we heard from a broad range of individuals from all across Pennsylvania, all walks of life. The largest crowd exceeded over 400 in Lancaster. So we had events, successful events all across Pennsylvania. I also want to thank my staff, who in many cases came with me across 67 counties in 93 days. And it was a really amazing experience to get out and have this conversation. And to be clear, several themes emerged that were beyond question. That first, Pennsylvanians, almost to the point of unanimous support, don't think that your life should be damaged, ruined, compromised in any way for small, non-violent marijuana or drug paraphernalia convictions. They also believe that cannabis shouldn't be criminalized in a way that could impact your life going forward. So the decriminalization of it is not even controversial. In fact, it was a unanimous sentiment expressed no matter what county I was in. And to the governor's call for actions, these are two actionable things that we could move on right away and make it in a way that there's almost unanimous support for. And to that end, I am directing Secretary Flood of the Board of Pardons to create a specific mechanism within the Board of Pardons to aggregate and expedite the pardon process for small marijuana, nonviolent convictions and drug paraphernalia convictions. So in other words, we've waived the fee, so it doesn't cost you anything. I would encourage every Pennsylvanian that has one of these charges to apply for a pardon today, so we can help you get beyond those small convictions and definitively issue a pardon. This proposal enjoys the full support of the governor and my office, and the Board of Pardons is to make sure we free Pennsylvanians from this incredible burden that's an unnecessary and is supported by the people of Pennsylvania. To be clear, another thing emerged, that if you are opposed to the recreational use, adult use of cannabis, that is a minority view now in Pennsylvania. A significant majority of Pennsylvanians support adult use cannabis here in Pennsylvania. And the governor has counted himself among that. And I, of course, do as well. And this is an opportune time to come together as a legislature to work on what we can all agree on, which is extra non-controversial, and move towards the conversation of a bigger perspective of legalizing adult use cannabis here in the Commonwealth. And I would also point out too that I would respectfully urge and ask our congressional delegation to urge the descheduling of cannabis as a Schedule I substance. This is unanimous. There wasn't one single individual, not one single citizen across Pennsylvania that came to our meetings that believed that cannabis belonged in that classification, even if they weren't supportive of adult recreational use cannabis. These are concrete, bipartisan steps that are supported by an overwhelming majority of Pennsylvanians, and we confirmed that during the course of our 67 county tour. Thank you.
So Lieutenant Governor, I'd be happy to take topics on question if there are questions on topic. If there are any questions off topic, I'll be happy to do a sidebar afterwards. Any questions on topic?
The response that you did receive from the report, did you hear from the law enforcement community at all?
We met with a lot of different organizations, and Barry, the Republican rep Joswiak is a member of the law enforcement community, and his bill, as a member, pointed out the absurdity of all these arrests and the expense. and what it actually does. So I think many in the law enforcement field feel that this is something that we have more pressing issues. And we met with the Police Chiefs Association statewide, and we actually encouraged police chiefs from any locale that we were in across 67 counties to come in and voice their views, pro or con, on this subject.
Have you heard anything from Republican leaders in the House or the Senate on either the thought of expunging for nonviolent offenses or reducing it to a summary offense on either of those proposals?
Well, I mentioned some of the bills that Republican senators and representatives are pushing. I think Representative Josiah, who's a Republican, has been actually introduced a bill 2 or 3 years ago, right? But I think this has been going on for a long time on the Republican side. So I think this is one of the things that I have heard could enjoy broad bipartisan support. We all know, I'm not sure what that means in terms of what will actually happen, but I think that there are examples of people who support this on both sides of the aisle and recognize that Pennsylvania could gain revenues from this. Pennsylvania could actually reduce the law enforcement expenses and maybe bring out there. I think we've learned some things from the opioid epidemic, that bringing something out into the open can actually address the challenge and maybe get to better outcomes than we do by just keeping it in underneath the ground.
So they haven't committed to like committee hearings or floor action or anything?
No, I haven't even asked for that, but this is the first time I'm just announcing this. I have said in the past I wasn't sure Pennsylvania was ready for this. I believe on the basis of what the Lieutenant Governor did, Pennsylvania is ready for this. I think it's time for the General Assembly to sit down and craft a bill that actually recognizes that Pennsylvania is ready for this and also takes advantage of what we've learned from other states in terms of what to do, what not to do, and how we can do this in a very effective way. Again, I think what we've done in the medical marijuana field, we were the 30th state to do that. We learned a lot from the examples and the experiences of other states. I think the same thing could be true.
If I could add to the governor's comment on medical marijuana in Pennsylvania, that is a universally loved program here in Pennsylvania. Everywhere, no matter what county, people supported it unanimously, regardless of what their views were on recreational. The one major issue they had was the expense of it, because it's not reimbursable through insurance. And that's also a Schedule I conflict, which also speaks to the need to have that conversation at a federal level. But Pennsylvania knocked it out of the park on their medical marijuana program, and that's what the residents told me. And that train was driven in part by the Republicans as well. And this is a conversation that we would certainly welcome them to on the recreational side.
Governor, the last time you brought this up, you had said that you were looking at efforts in New York and New Jersey on recreational marijuana. It's stalled in both of those states.
Right.
I mean, can you speak to how that votes for Pennsylvania and whether you're taking lessons from that?
I'm not taking any lessons from that. I'm looking at what we've learned, what the Lieutenant Governor learned here in Pennsylvania, and I think we're unique. Every other state that has tried this, now including New York and New Jersey, I think has a unique experience. And so I don't know if you have a different impression, but I looked at all the other states that have gone through this, and I didn't see two that really look very similar. So I don't think Pennsylvania is trapped by what happened anywhere else in the country.
If I'm not mistaken, I think New York voted to decriminalize it, and New Jersey is right on the cusp. I've spoken to people, they're right on the cusp. They're just kind of hammering out the details. So in short order, Pennsylvania is going to be awash in legal cannabis. It just won't be coming from our state until those other states, once those other states come online. And that was a conversation we had a lot in, especially the border counties of New York and out in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Follow up on that. Your 3 different recommendations. Would you classify one as being a higher priority than the others, like decriminalization versus full legalization?
Personally, I think all 3 are important. I mean, but I mentioned the first 2, just that I think those things that's sort of low-hanging fruit. We can decriminalize. I ran on that 2014. I think people of Pennsylvania, and the Lieutenant Governor said people he heard from in the 67 counties believe that's really important. The third issue on legalization, I believe we ought to do. I recognize that'll take longer time to do that. We haven't been working as long on that, so it just seems to me that practically that might take a longer period of time. But the first two should be fairly easy, and as part of, again, a bipartisan interest in criminal justice reform, I think this would be something that would be very useful and something we can do fairly quickly.
And something that we can do this afternoon is those Pennsylvanians with those type of convictions can apply for a pardon right away. That's a process that's already established, and we're going to, again, expedite and aggregate those charges for pardons and move them and get them to the governor's desk in a way that recognizes we want to free these Pennsylvanians up from these small type of infractions that can really jam up their personal and professional lives.
Yes.
Do you have any sense of how many, what's your expectation for the number of pardon applications you're going to get?
I wouldn't know, but we want to put the message out far and wide that if you've been burdened, if you've been harmed by this type of conviction in your past, Pennsylvania believes in the second chance. Governor Wolf is a national leader in criminal justice reform, and this is a way that already currently exists. And we can fine-tune that process to serve as many Pennsylvanians as we can until we can get to a point where we could pass legislation that creates mass expungement for every Pennsylvanian that is currently being damaged by this kind of conviction in their past.
Yes.
What was the most surprising moment from your 67 county tour? Was there a statement that struck you talking to people?
No, one of the things that really drove home to me were veterans. We would routinely have veterans come to these meetings, and then oftentimes they would break down in tears because they would say that cannabis was the one thing that helps me feel normal. Not great, not better, but just normal. So they can begin the process to cope with their PTSD and just begin to process some of the trauma they've endured. And they said that the country that I was harmed defending treats me like a criminal. And I can go to the VA and get whatever pills that they want, but I can't get what I need, and it forces me to either go without or to be technically labeled a criminal. And I would want people to understand that there are a lot of long-suffering veterans in Pennsylvania that could be greatly supported by this expansion, and that's what we heard a lot from. Another thing that we learned is that people really wanted to talk about it, and it was all uniformly civil. In a day of mounting political discourse and online flame wars and what have you, everyone was uniformly civil across all 67 counties. And I think that's a tribute to the people of Pennsylvania, and I think it's a reflection of a desire of them to actually democratically participate in a process and share their views on this very important issue.
Did you have any thoughts going in that you would see that kind of civility?
I certainly hope to it. I wasn't surprised or blown away by it. But in this day and age of polarization, I guess anything's possible. But uniformly civil across all 67 counties. It was really an incredibly vital learning experience that it helps people participate that may not get the sense. And life looks a lot different in Cameron County with 5,000 people in the 5th largest city in America, in Philadelphia. And this was one issue that people, no matter what county they lived in Pennsylvania, had a lot of interest and a lot of passion and enthusiasm to talk about whatever side that they were on.
What do you think it is about this issue that brings that kind of level of discussion?
It just depends. There's a strong libertarian streak within conservative communities that the government has no business telling me what I can do in my own home. And there is social justice and that it disproportionately impacts communities of color. And can we move past this and stop damaging people's future potential over these low-level convictions? There's law enforcement that says we've got bigger fish to fry. Why are we getting jammed up with these kind of things? Help us free us up from having to contend with some of these things.
Governor, I was wondering if you could,
Just
sorry.
one, then I'll get you. Okay.
I was just wondering, I know we're early on in the discussion about legalizing the one in Colorado. Is there any thought to any restrictions that you have in mind? I know the edible products seem to cause a problem for some of the critics and any talking about restrictions.
Yeah, I think the lieutenant governor could probably speak to this as well, but I think we can look around at the experience of other states and see things that have gone well. But to your point, we can also look at places where we can use some improvement, and that's one where in some places, you find pets or children ingesting things that they shouldn't be ingesting. Again, one of the things about legalizing it is it actually brings it out into the light, and you can actually go after people who are doing irresponsible things. As long as it's illegal, I mean, we don't have that recourse. But we can certainly learn in terms of the regulations, and that's why I think it's important for the General Assembly to debate this and make sure that we do this right. Again, what the Lieutenant Governor found was people want regulated adult recreational marijuana use. It's not kids, it's not illicit stuff, it's not putting bad things into it, it's recreational marijuana for adults, and it's controlled. How we do that and how other states have done that, I think, is what the democratic process is actually very well suited to do, and we can learn from what other states have done, just as we did in the medical marijuana case.
To your point specifically about edibles, there was significant reservation expressed about edibles. This idea that it's a delivery mechanism that is attractive to children and young people. But I also would point out too, there wasn't one single Pennsylvanian that advocated that the legal consumption use of cannabis should be below 21. There was a lot of concern about making sure we do what our best to keep it out of the hands of young people. And some folks would confront me with the question, well, you want your kids smoking marijuana? And I would say, no, I don't want them drinking underage either. But I tell you, if they do make a choice to experiment, as many teenagers do, with cannabis, I would want it to come from a safe, regulated source and pure, where we knew where it came from and you knew what was in it, as opposed to what happens today, to the governor's point, bringing it out of an unknowable background or origin to something that is safe, regulated, taxed, and pure.
How do you account for self-selection in preparing the report? I mean, so often in the political process, those who go to a meeting or do a poll online are those on either ends of the extreme. And you say 65 to 70% of the attendees support legalization, but what if that's just the sliver of the cross-section of the population?
It's absolutely, I mean, it's a concern, but if we wanted to gin up the numbers, we could read a map. We could predict which counties would give us the number if we had a preconceived notion of where we wanted to go. But we went to all 67 counties, and studies or statistics have shown that a majority of Republicans support marijuana legalization. Grover Norquist, he's not exactly sunshine and lollipops on the liberal side, and he supports it. The Cato Institute. I mean, these aren't progressive think tanks that also are for it. So this idea, and statistic after statistic show that even a majority of Republicans support this. And it's been asked over and over again, why don't you put it on the ballot? Put it on the ballot. And I think the governor and I would think that would be a fine idea, but it's not a viable option here in Pennsylvania. So we can't get an exact reading other than to keep having this democratic conversation the governor alluded to towards these solutions, whether it's decriminalization, expungement, or ultimately full legalization.
But neither of us are making the argument that this was a scientifically selected survey. We think, my impression is that the Pennsylvanians are ready for this, but we're not making, Lieutenant Governor nor I are making the argument that based on the 44,407 people who weighed in on this issue, that is somehow a scientific sample.
Sure, but there are policy ramifications to the report.
That's right. We're a democracy, and in Pennsylvania, we don't have the referendum. The only thing we could do is a constitutional amendment, so we have representative democracy here, and representatives do the things that they think are best for the people, and they are close to the people. So I think that's a really good solution for this. Yeah.
To what extent is your support for legalizing recreational marijuana